The federal government is spending $40 million this year to kill it. They hire contractors to spray it from helicopters. They soak entire river systems with a chemical that shares its active ingredient with Agent Orange. They have been doing this on schedule every single year for 6 decades, without stopping, without pausing, and without achieving anything permanent. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, villages are running their kitchen stoves on this exact plant for free. In China, researchers are using it to clean industrial rivers that manufacturing destroyed. A NASA scientist proved in 1975 that it could replace entire municipal wastewater treatment systems across the American South. The federal agency responsible for water infrastructure has never acted on a single finding. This is water hyacinth, in the collision between what this plant demonstrably does and what the federal government pays to prevent it from doing, is one of the most expensive institutional decisions in American environmental history. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why the river keeps growing back, and exactly who benefits when it does. Water hyacinth generates more biomass per acre than sugarcane. Its root system removes nitrogen and phosphorus contamination from polluted water more efficiently than any mechanical filtration system currently sold commercially in the United States. Converted to biogas, a single acre produces enough methane to power multiple households for a full year. It does all of this on water where nothing else can grow, with zero fertilizer input, zero irrigation, and no labor beyond harvesting. The Army Corps of Engineers has a standing federal mandate to destroy it. That mandate is 60 years old. It has survived administrations of both parties, multiple federal environmental laws, and 30 years of published scientific evidence that the mandate is costing more than it is solving. What it has not survived is the audit that would force Washington to explain why. The story begins at a World's Fair. In 1884, the Cotton States exhibition opened in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was one of the grandest international exhibitions in American history, a showcase of post-Reconstruction Southern industry and commerce. Among the international displays was a presentation from a Japanese delegation featuring a plant so visually extraordinary, petals of pale violet and blue, leaves polished to a dark and waxy green, that visitors crowded around it for the duration of the fair. The plant was water hyacinth, native to the Amazon basin in Brazil. The Japanese delegation was distributing cuttings as diplomatic gifts. American visitors took them home. They planted them in garden ponds across Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Georgia. It was beautiful, it was exotic, and it grew fast. That last detail was about to become one of the most consequential species introductions in American history. Water hyacinth does not grow like a garden flower. In warm, shallow, nutrient-rich water, the exact conditions of the American South, it doubles its surface coverage every 2 weeks. Not every season, every 2 weeks. A small handful of ornamental cuttings from an 1884 World's Fair booth had completely sealed off commercial stretches of the St. Johns River in Florida by 1895. Steamboat navigation halted, commercial fishing collapsed, the river, in practical terms, ceased to function as a working waterway. The Army Corps of Engineers received its first emergency clearance order that same year. They sent men with rakes, then with boats, then with mechanical cutting machines that required constant maintenance and constant replacement. Then, in the early 1950s, they began aerial application of 2,4-D, a broad-spectrum herbicide synthesized by Dow Chemical in 1944, one of 2 active compounds in what would later be deployed as Agent Orange in Vietnam. The Corps applied it to southern waterways by the hundreds of thousands of gallons annually. The water hyacinth absorbed it, died back, and regrew from floating seed within weeks. They applied more. It came back faster. And while the Army Corps was perfecting the science of a battle they could not win, a researcher at a NASA facility in Mississippi was about to publish in peer-reviewed detail exactly what they were erasing every spring. In 1975, a scientist named Billy C. Wolverton was working at NASA's Stennis Space Center in Hancock County, Mississippi. His assignment was unusual for a space agency. He was developing biological water treatment systems, simple, plant-based, low-infrastructure systems that could purify contaminated water using only sunlight, suitable for remote communities and eventually for long-duration space missions. He tested dozens of aquatic species. Water hyacinth was not his primary candidate. When the results came back, it became the only candidate. In controlled lagoon experiments, water hyacinth removed 90% of nitrogen and phosphorus from municipal wastewater within 48 hours. It pulled lead, cadmium, and mercury directly into its root mass. It reduced biological oxygen demand, the key scientific measure of how depleted and ecologically dangerous a body of water has become, by 80%. The water exiting his test lagoons met full EPA clean water discharge standards, and the only inputs to the entire system were sunlight and the contaminated water the plant was already growing in. Wolverton spent the following decade building on those results. He published in peer-reviewed journals. He presented findings to the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of the Interior. He built working demonstration systems in Mississippi and demonstrated that a series of water hyacinth lagoons could fully replace the mechanical wastewater treatment infrastructure of a small American city at roughly 1/10 the construction cost, with zero electrical consumption and zero synthetic chemical inputs, forever. The EPA convened meetings, pilot programs were formally proposed, reports were filed. Then the federal apparatus did what it does when a solution threatens to make an existing program obsolete. It studied the matter, issued no policy, then moved on. That non-response has a very specific financial architecture. And if you think the herbicide contract is the only reason this program has never changed, the number that comes next is significantly larger. Under the Federal Noxious Weed Act, water hyacinth carries a prohibited invasive species designation. That classification carries no exception for demonstrated beneficial uses. It does not say eradicate unless NASA proves otherwise. It says eradicate, full stop. The Army Corps of Engineers, whose legal mandate has always been maintaining navigable waterways, had an institutional obligation to destroy the plant that predated Wolverton's first experiment by 20 years. Adopting his system would have required reclassifying the plant through Congress, restructuring the Corps' mission, and canceling herbicide procurement contracts that had been automatically renewing for 3 decades. The primary supplier of those contracts was Dow Chemical. 2,4-D was Dow's product, a treatment system that runs on sunlight and requires no chemical inputs, does not generate a renewal order. A treatment strategy that fails predictably on schedule every single year generates a new contract every spring. But the herbicide lobby is only the floor of this story. The commercial navigation industry operating on the Mississippi River and its tributaries moves approximately 400 million tons of cargo annually: coal, grain, petroleum, industrial chemicals. This system represents approximately $12 billion in annual economic activity. It is the hidden circulatory infrastructure of the American industrial economy, then most Americans are completely unaware it exists. Any plant that can seal a navigable tributary in a single growing season is not a water quality issue to that industry. It is a direct threat to freight schedules and operating margins. The Army Corps of Engineers was created, structurally, to serve navigation. Its budget relationships run directly through navigation industry stakeholders. And those stakeholders have ensured, through 60 years of procurement cycles and appropriations lobbying, that the Corps' mandate has never been expanded to include the question of what to do with the plant once it has been cut. The outcome is an institution that has perfected the art of losing the same battle every year on an annual federal budget funded by the taxpayers who live downstream. While America was spraying, the rest of the world was building something entirely different with the same plant. In China, commercial water hyacinth processing programs have been operating since the early 1990s. The plant is harvested, fed into anaerobic biogas digesters, and the methane captured for energy. The liquid digestate becomes liquid fertilizer on surrounding agricultural land. Dried biomass is processed into animal feed and paper fiber. Documented biogas yields reached 70,000 cubic feet per acre per year. That is 4 times the energy output per acre of corn grown for ethanol, on water that cannot grow corn. From a plant, the American government is simultaneously paying $40 million per year to poison. In Ethiopia, along the shores of Lake Tana, where water hyacinth had been formally categorized as an environmental catastrophe for 2 decades, a cooperative biogas program converted the infestation into a village energy supply within a single growing season. Families that had been purchasing kerosene for cooking were producing their own gas. No imported infrastructure, no subsidies, no utility contract. A plant, a digester, and sunlight. In Kerala, India, where water hyacinth had filled irrigation canals for generations and cost the state tens of millions in dredging operations, the state-funded women's cooperative began harvesting the plant for fiber weaving in 2017. Within 3 years, water hyacinth furniture was selling in international design markets. The obstruction that had cost a generation of agricultural productivity became a revenue-generating supply chain. Every single one of these programs was built on one insight. You do not fight the biology. You harvest what the water produces, convert it to something the economy can use, and let the harvesting itself become the management program. Now here is the number that should stop you cold. The United States currently spends more money in a single year destroying water hyacinth in Louisiana than it would cost to establish a full commercial harvesting network capable of supplying biogas to 30,000 American homes. That network would generate energy revenue from the first harvest. It would eliminate herbicide procurement costs. It would remediate waterways that currently exceed federal nitrogen and phosphorus contamination limits every single summer. The Army Corps of Engineers' 2023 budget request for aquatic plant control in Louisiana? $43 million. Number of times the words harvesting, biogas, or utilization appear in that document? 0. The plants does not care. Water hyacinth does not negotiate with annual appropriation cycles. Every acre the Corps kills in March is back to full surface coverage by July. They have run this cycle 60 consecutive times. The river has won 60 consecutive times because the river was always going to win. The only question is whether the winning is ever allowed to be useful. It can be. In your own backyard, in a closed, contained system with no connection to natural waterways, a stock tank or lined pond of water hyacinth will pull nitrogen and phosphorus contamination from gray water and produce harvestable biomass that can feed a small-scale biogas digester. Organizations like the American Water Hyacinth Cooperative and university extension programs in Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia are currently publishing cultivation guides for non-invasive contained systems. The same plant the federal government pays $40 million per year to poison can, in a sealed backyard system, purify water and generate cooking fuel simultaneously. Check your state regulations before purchasing plants. and most northern states with a water temperature drops below 50 degrees in winter, the ecological risk of containment breach is essentially zero. The biology is on your side. The story of water hyacinth is not really about a plant. It is about what happens when the institution responsible for managing a problem has a structural financial stake in the problem never actually being resolved. The Army Corps of Engineers did not set out to suppress a fuel source, they set out to protect navigation. But 60 years of herbicide contracts and a federal classification that has never been updated produced the outcome that no rational environmental policy would ever design: a government that pays every single year to destroy one of the most productive biological systems on the planet. The NASA data is in federal archives, the Chinese biogas yields are in peer-reviewed journals, the Ethiopian village energy results are backing up to be photographed. All of it has been waiting since 1975 for a policy that decides to catch up with the biology. The river is still growing. It always will. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Forgotten Roots and hit the bell. Every share keeps this knowledge alive.